You know those moments in reality TV that hit harder because they happen without a single word. This was one of them. Chris Dumit, loyal, dependable, and deeply rooted in Parker Schnabel's crew, vanished. Not into thin air, but into the arms of Parker's rival, Rick Ness. One day, he was knee-deep in Parker's gold room. The next, he was suiting up next to Rick, wearing a new hard hat on unfamiliar ground. And just like that, a decade of loyalty fractured. Chris wasn't just another face in the crew. He had stood with Parker through some of the wildest, muddiest, coldest breakdowns imaginable. From back-to-back sleepless nights to record-breaking gold seasons, he was always there. He never asked for glory. He never made noise. He just showed up, got the job done, and kept everyone grounded when chaos swirled around them. Chris started as a carpenter, just a guy building a cabin for Todd Hoffman's crew. But when someone failed to show up, he picked up a shovel and never put it down again. That moment launched a mining journey nobody could have predicted. When Todd's team disbanded, Chris joined Parker Schnabel, who was still young, still figuring things out, and still building his reputation. Chris brought experience and calm to a crew that was often racing against the clock. Between Parker and the Hoffmans is day and night. The Hoffmans ran very few hours a day. Parker was very aggressive. Just go, 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 go. Over time, he became more than a worker. He became Parker's foundation, trusted, reliable, and revered. But gold mining isn't just about hauling pay dirt. It's about surviving the grind. And as Parker grew his operation, things changed. What began as a single wash plant grew into a three-headed monster. 3 massive plants running at once, pushing non-stop to meet increasingly insane targets. Chris stayed in the gold room, where everything ends up, where the results of every dig, every hour, every backbreaking shift are finally revealed. But suddenly, he wasn't just dealing with one plant's cleanup. Now he had 3. That meant 3 times the work, 3 times the stress, and absolutely no room to breathe. To make it worse, the wash plants weren't even close together. We're talking miles apart. Chris found himself driving between sites constantly, finishing one cleanup, then immediately bouncing over rocky roads to start another. No breaks, no support, no backup. Chris, true to his character, kept quiet. He didn't blow up or throw a fit, but something was shifting. I think starting off 100% right off the bat could be disastrous, but he's got the control, so we'll see what happens. He began asking for help. A second set of hands, a bit of relief. But Parker, buried in numbers and obsessed with pushing production higher, didn't slow down. Help never came. The message was clear. The priority wasn't the people, it was gold. Chris's body kept moving, but his spirit began to fracture. He was running on fumes, driving for hours just to start the same brutal process over again. No meals, no rest, barely any time to think, just pressure, endless pressure. There was no dramatic moment when Chris snapped, no meltdown, no scene, just a slow erosion. His eyes looked heavier, his steps are more deliberate. He looked like a man whose tank had been empty for a long time, but who kept pushing forward out of habit. And the cracks, they weren't visible to everyone, but they were there. Still, Chris tried to hold it all together. Eventually, it wasn't about work anymore. It was about survival. Chris looked at the years he'd given, the loyalty, the backbreaking shifts, the commitment that rarely got acknowledged, and realized something heartbreaking. No matter how much he gave, he was still standing in that gold room alone. And then came the final shift. No screaming, no arguments, just a quiet goodbye to no one. Chris left Parker's claim, walked away from the only mining family he'd known for a decade, and joined forces with Rick Ness, someone who had once stood on the same team, then stepped away, faced his demons, and returned stronger. Rick Ness didn't exactly ride back into the Klondike with fanfare or celebration. His return was quieter, almost uncertain. He'd been gone for a while, not just from the show, but from mining itself. During that time, Rick faced personal demons. Whatever he went through, it took a toll. A lot of people figured that was it. That Rick Ness, once Parker Schnabel's right-hand man, was finished, that he'd burned out for good. But they were wrong. When Rick came back, he wasn't the same man who had walked away. He was leaner, more focused. Not just physically, but mentally. The weight of his past hadn't broken him. It had refined him. He didn't come back to chase glory or outshine Parker. He didn't come back for attention. He returned with something more grounded, a vision, a goal to build something healthier, something smarter. A mining crew that didn't just work, but worked together. And to bring that vision to life, Rick needed people, not just bodies, to fill a crew list. He needed trust. He needed experience. He needed someone who wouldn't fold under pressure, but wouldn't create it either. He needed Chris Dumet. Chris didn't make the leap because of money. He didn't move because of fancy equipment or some glittering promise of more gold. That wasn't Rick's style. In fact, it only took a single conversation. One real, honest, human exchange. Rick didn't sugarcoat the situation. He laid it out for what it was, a smaller operation, tighter resources, and fewer hands on deck. But he also made it clear what he was offering. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. It was dignity. A chance to breathe again. A place where your work mattered, but you mattered more. For Chris, who had spent season after season being buried under goals and silence, that was everything. He didn't need more money. He needed meaning, and Rick gave him that. There was no dramatic walk-off, no confrontation, no on-camera confession or final send-off. Chris didn't gather the crew or look for one last conversation with Parker. He didn't even leave a note. He just disappeared. One day, he was Parker's foundation, the man handling the gold, managing the chaos, keeping everything on track with the kind of focus only experience can provide. He had become the one person everyone else could count on when things went sideways. And then, without a word, he was gone. No announcement, no explanation, no warning. When the news finally surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the Gold Rush fandom. The reaction wasn't mild. It was a full-blown eruption. Viewers who had followed Chris for years were blindsided. This wasn't some background character leaving the show. This was Chris Dumet. To many, he was the Gold Rush. Some fans rushed to his defense, saying it was about time he prioritized himself. After years of carrying the weight of multiple wash plants with barely a break, maybe he deserved a clean slate. To them, this was a man reclaiming his peace, choosing sanity over grind. But not everyone saw it that way. Others were stunned in a different way, felt betrayed even. They couldn't believe someone who had stood with Parker through thick and thin would walk away, especially without saying goodbye. To them, it felt like abandonment, like a silent strike across the loyalty Parker had always assumed. Yet, despite the divide, one truth rang louder than all the noise. No one saw it coming. This wasn't just another crew member switching teams. It felt seismic. The kind of shift that shakes the foundation beneath everyone still standing in the same spot. And for Parker, it was personal. Because when even your most loyal man walks away without a word, it stops being about gold. It becomes a warning. Even the strongest backbones can break. Mining with Rick wasn't a vacation. It wasn't meant to be. The ground still needed moving. The equipment still broke. The cold still crept in. And the work was just as grueling. But something fundamental had changed. There was space now, literal and mental. The days were long but not relentless. The cleanups were tough but not overwhelming. And for the first time in years, Chris could look around and feel human. Rick didn't vanish into the shadows, managing everything from a distance. He was there in the dirt, in the noise, right beside the crew. He didn't lead from behind a desk. He led from the front lines. He asked questions, checked in, smiled, and those small gestures, they mattered more than any bonus ever could. Chris wasn't just a machine anymore. He wasn't reduced to numbers or expected to absorb the pressure of an entire operation on his own. He was part of a team again, an actual team. No one pretended Rick's operation was flashy. There weren't spare dozers waiting in the wings. If something broke, someone had to crawl under it and figure it out. There was no tech crew on standby or endless backup plans. It was raw, bare bones, real. But inside that rougher setup, Chris found something he hadn't felt in years. Relief. He could stop to eat, sit down without guilt, get through a full cleanup without rushing toward another emergency just miles away. There was a rhythm again, not a race. He wasn't being chewed up by the system. He was working the system, and it worked with him. Back at Parker Schnabel's camp, something felt different, like a subtle shift in the air that no one wanted to name out loud. Chris Dumit's absence wasn't just noticeable, it was undeniable. Routines were the same, the machinery kept humming, and the pay dirt kept moving, but the balance was off. No matter how skilled the rest of the crew was, no one could step into Chris's boots. His unique patience under pressure, his calm during chaotic days, and his quiet leadership had always acted as an invisible glue that held things together. When tempers flared or machines broke down, Chris was the steady hand keeping everything on track. Parker's gold counts might have still been rising, and from the outside, it looked like the operation hadn't skipped a beat. But inside the camp, the loss was felt in the way people moved, the way they worked, and the way the team responded to setbacks. Without Chris, something vital was missing, and the crew knew it. This wasn't just about losing an employee. Chris's departure sent a message loud and clear. Even the most dependable man on the crew had a breaking point. It made people talk. It made them think. If someone like him could walk away, then who was safe from reaching that same edge? Whispers began to circulate. Crew members who had once kept their heads down started asking quiet questions. How much was too much? Were their sacrifices even noticed? If Chris, Parker's most loyal and seasoned man, had reached his limit, what did that mean for the rest of them? And maybe somewhere behind those endless spreadsheets and gold projections, even Parker started to wonder. Had he pushed too hard for too long? Was the cost of hitting bigger numbers finally catching up? Not in the gold room, but in the hearts of his team. For all the show's drama, this story was never really about the gold. Not at its core. This was about a man, Chris Dumit, who gave everything he had for over a decade. He showed up, stayed late, worked through impossible conditions, and held the line when others faltered. He didn't ask for praise or reward. He just did the job every single day. But in return, all he got was more pressure. Chris didn't leave to chase fortune. He didn't abandon ship for comfort or luxury. What finally pushed him over the edge wasn't the workload itself, but the realization that no matter how much he gave, it would never be enough. Something inside him said it clearly. This isn't right anymore. Chris Dumit didn't storm out. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam any doors on the way out. He walked away quietly. But that silence echoed louder than any confrontation ever could. Chris had been holding everything together for years. And when he finally let go, the shock wasn't just in his absence. It was in the message he left behind. By joining Rick, Chris showed the world that loyalty, no matter how deep, has limits. That even the strongest, most consistent crew member can reach a breaking point. And that sometimes choosing your own peace over someone else's ambition is the bravest move of all. He didn't just leave Parker's crew. He rewrote what it means to be loyal. He proved that walking away doesn't make you weak. It means you finally decided to stop fading into the background. And in the world of gold mining, where everyone is chasing the next big win, Chris reminded us of something far more valuable. Sometimes the quietest moves are the ones that shake everything.